me tell you something, Big Daddy from Cincinnati. I've been from Maine to Spain, and I've been deep down in the Ukraine. I've wrestled in Madison Square Garden in New York and went all the way to Holland. I got accused of spreading pollen, but that's how we created the hive. But you see, I've been north, south, east, and west. I've been from ocean to ocean, from coast to coast. But you know something? The podcast that I dig the most happens to be Once Upon a Turnbuckle and my friend Chris. So tune in and listen to them, or you'll get stung. Oh, yes, sir.
You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's now time for our main event. Take a trip back in time to the golden era of the wrestling world with your host, Chris Techrold Blair. Welcome to Once Upon a Turnbuckle.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of Once Upon a Turnbuckle. And I always say my episodes are special, but this one is extra special because this is a guest who you'll all know anyway, but it's someone who I've been in contact with pretty much almost as long as I've had this show going. And I'm so pleased to bring him on. Wrestling royalty, the Killer Bee himself, Brian Blair. Welcome to the show, sir.
Chris, it's great to be on Once Upon a Turnbuckle with you, my friend. You've become a friend to me. You're a very kind individual, and look back at some of your shows. You do a great job at interviewing people and getting the most out of them. So I'm really looking forward to the questions you throw at me.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I've been really building myself up to this one. I mean, this, like I say, going back to our messages, I think I found 19th of October 2020. Was the first time we exchanged a message, and we've been kind of building it up since that. And I think we have picked the best time to do it as well, because so much has happened that we can now talk about since then as well. So, I mean, first and foremost, I'll bring it out early. Truth be told, incredible book. Anyone who's watching this who hasn't picked one of these up yet, go and get it. I couldn't put it down when I started reading it. You come from an era that I grew up with, but I didn't necessarily know everything about you, which is fantastic to then finally have this. And we'll talk about this a bit more, obviously, through the course of the show. What's happening with you? You know, how are you basically? You know, you're about as busy as I think you were back in your heyday by the looks of it.
Yes, and you know, I had a setback for a while, Chris. In July of, I had a back operation in July of 2021, and I contacted what's called osteomyelitis, when a surgical tube that drains the blood from your spine came out of my spine, and I didn't realize it, and started to the restroom. Because you walk after the very first day after back surgery, and you have to have a walker, of course, and they do like you to have a nurse. But anyway, I had to pee, and so I felt a little pop in my back. I didn't know what it was. I got up and started walking. I think I took a couple steps to towards the bathroom, and then I came back, and something told me to like turn around back, and I looked down, and it looked like a chicken had its head cut off. There was so much blood on the floor, and I didn't know where it came from. And so I went and sat back down on my bed and called the nurse's button immediately. And the nurse came in, and she looked, and she goes, ah. And so that's when I went, ah. And I don't know what's wrong. I'm feeling and looking and I
Yeah.
don't have any holes in me. And I totally forgot that I have a drain on my back and that's what it could be. But then I hear the nurse say, "Oh, it's your heme." And so, which means my hemovac tube is what she was trying to say.
Right.
And so the tube had fallen out, drug across the ground, sat back down, is laying on the floor. Well, the nurse picks the tube up and sticks it back in my back. And it took her a minute or two to get it back in my back. And then we had problems from there. It wouldn't stop bleeding for, you're supposed to leave it in for 5 days. I think I took it out like the third day, maybe the fourth. The doctor took it out. I didn't take it out. And the doctor came in the following day because it just wouldn't stop bleeding, I think, from where she kept trying to poke it back in there. And well, a few days go by and I'm wondering, well, I didn't think that much of that particular incident at the time, although I was a little skeptical that she didn't disinfect it. But then I looked and figured, well, I'm on IV, so that the antibiotic that they're giving me intravenously would probably take care of anything. So again, I just didn't think much about it. And I had kissed my oldest son, give him a hug and a kiss, and he told me we just got back from vacation down in the Keys fishing, had a great trip. And he said he'd be in to see me in the hospital, and he didn't come, and I was getting worried about him and still didn't know what happened. And right before I was getting out of the hospital, I was feeling some all of a sudden some kind of new pain. And then I get home, and the first day I get home, I get a knock on my door, and it's two detectives, and they tell me that my son had been murdered. And it was the hardest news that it was the hardest thing that I ever heard in my life. And well, from there, the pain kept getting worse and worse in my back. And I thought it was because I didn't have they give you a brace, like a turtle shell brace, so you can't move. Because this was my second back surgery, so I know the protocol. And I called to get a brace, and it's like, okay, it's on the way. Well, I never wound up getting a brace. That surgery was July 16th, and I never got a brace until until September 1st.
Wow.
And I was hunching over, and I had to go do my son's eulogy in the most dire pain that I had ever been in. And I went to the emergency room a couple of times to find out what was wrong with the pain. They thought I had kidney stones, just all kinds of things that weren't until my primary care doctor said, you need to go get both a blood test and an MRI because I think you might have an infection. And sure enough, I had osteomyelitis. And if you look it up, there's, like 30% of the people that get this die. Oh, wow. And so it was very scary. So I had emergency surgery again on October 30th. And so it actually took my ability to walk. I could not walk. I all of a sudden I was at home and had gone to the emergency room where they had, after they MRI, disclosed the osteomyelitis, and they put me on a PICC line, which is a line that goes to right by your heart, and you actually do home IV. Okay. And I started that, but apparently it was kind of like too late. So the pain was excruciating. All of a sudden, I was paralyzed. I could not move from the waist down. Couldn't use the bathroom, couldn't do anything. I couldn't stand up. And so they rushed me to the hospital. I had emergency surgery on October 30th. And with a lot of hard work, some good therapists, and I think Dr. Small, who performed the surgery, did a pretty good job. And I went from not being able to walk to progressing to a walker, and then from a walker now to a cane. I can walk with a cane, but it's still a work in progress. Sure. And so I felt like Job. If you ever read the Bible, Job was he lost his family and lost his health, and so this all happened to me at one time. Maybe not as bad as Job, but certainly enough to know that you're challenged, and challenged beyond a normal person's strength, including mine. I mean, it's been very, very difficult, but every day is a little brighter. Yeah. Every day is a little better. And I've kept all my, all my obligations. I had to cancel a lot of autograph sessions and signings between the times, but I have have staff at the Cauliflower Alley Club, so they kind of stepped up and picked up where I needed to, because I have a passion for helping the wrestlers that fall on difficult financial times, and the Cauliflower Alley Club does just that. We help lots and lots of people. I mean, it's amazing. Guys that have made millions of dollars, like Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. We don't say their names unless they give us permission, but Bobby the Brain Heenan, Paul Orndorff, Kamala, just to name a few, saved their homes. And that's what the organization does. And your listeners can go to caulifloweralleyclub.org, and I don't know what it is overseas. I think it might be $50 a year to join the club, and half of that goes to help the wrestlers into the benevolent fund, and the other half goes to mail you 4 copies of the newsletter that we do each year. So it's a great organization. We have a reunion coming up in September. It'll be our 56th reunion. Wow. And we've got some great honorees there. It's in Vegas. You can go to caulifloweralleyclub.org, and everything's on the website. Cool. And you can see all the wonderful honorees that'll be there.
We were just talking before we came on to this, actually, that I've always known the name, the Cauliflower Alley Club. I never really knew what it did. I mean, I read reports of the events that were put on and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was almost like a Hall of Fame. And it wasn't until I read your book that I found out how amazing it is as an organization and what it does. Because I think wrestling fans do forget that when your in-ring career finishes, especially if it doesn't finish when you want it to, you may not have stability in your life. It's something that helps you live and helps you, carry on and rebuild. And I think it's amazing. And the fact that you're not only involved, but you're the chairman of the Cauliflower Alley Club.
I'm actually the president and the CEO, so I stayed pretty involved.
Yeah, no, that's sort of turned on its head, actually, since we've come this way, because this is such an inspirational start. I've not even had to ask you, to talk about your in-ring career, which everyone knows you for. Just the fact that you've gone through all of that within the last couple of years, that is life. That's thrown some very real problems your way, and you're still here and you're fighting it all, and you're helping others as well. Let's talk about the Cauliflower Alley Club. How did it come about for you? Your involvement through to obviously where you are now.
Well, let me just go back a little bit and tell you that you and your listeners, that the Cauliflower Alley Club was established in 1965 by a gentleman by the name of Iron Mike Mazurki. And Iron Mike was both a movie star and a professional wrestler. And he was very famous in both jobs, both occupations. And he would gather at the Moose, I think it was the Moose Lodge in California, and they would have lunches, and a few of the guys were called runners. Mm-hmm. And all the guys would talk about the financial situations of all the boys, because they wanted to make sure that everybody was feeding their families. Yeah. So Iron Mike who was making probably the most money of any of the wrestlers at that time. Maybe, Gorgeous George, Wagner, Luthez, a couple others might have been making more, but he also had a dual income with his movies, and he was co-star with John Wayne in a bunch of movies. So he made a lot of money, and he was a philanthropist. And so he would send wads of money to different wrestlers that needed the money, and that's how the Cauliflower Alley Club started. Now we're getting ready to have our 56th anniversary. Would be 57th, but we missed a year because of COVID.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I started back before the 49th, before the 50th, right after the 49th reunion, when Nick Bockwinkel realized he was getting dementia.
Okay.
And he, along with Carl Lauer, who recently passed, God bless him, he was the CEO for 27, 30 years. Harley Race, they were looking for somebody to take over the club that had some business acumen and was respected amongst the boys. And not only did I start Gold's Gyms in Hillsborough County in Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, I started with one and built 4 and had the rights to 7 and created the 1-800-99 Golds number, which was a switching number so that all the Golds could put in a certain amount of money into a pool of advertising, and you dial 1-800-99 Golds and it would route the caller to the nearest Gold's Gym. So nobody got cheated and everybody was happy. So, you have 14 clubs, you put in $500, you have a $7,000 radio buy, for example, and you're only paying $500 and you're getting the benefit of a $14,000 buy. Yeah. So it just made us so successful. It's public record. I wound up selling the clubs debt free for $2.1 million. And Steve Kern happened to be, most people know Steve Kern, Doink, Skinner, Fabulous Ones. Steve's one of my best friends, and he lives not far from me. Cool. And as a matter of fact, when I look over my lake, the lake I live on, he is exactly 1 mile due west. And he's the air flights, he's right in the path of the Tampa International Airport. They fly over it. He's in a beautiful neighborhood, but all the neighbors have to wash the roofs every year because that gasoline, the petrol falls on them. So anyway, we tease each other a lot and have a lot of fun. We just were in Atlanta. We were just in Atlanta doing the new Vice TV series that will air this season. I had been on, you remember the Dark Side of the Ring?
Yes.
So there's a new series getting ready to start about the territories.
Oh wow!
So many people don't understand how the territories worked, who was popular, all the different questions about the territories. So Vice has put together groups of individuals that have the most knowledge of certain territories. And for example, they do Florida, they'll do New York was a territory, Mid-South, Tennessee, Portland, all over the states. And of course, we had many English wrestlers, and I got to be friends with lots of them. Les Thornton was a fun guy, but just many. Of course, Davey Boy Smith. Davey and I were really good friends, and Tommy Billington and Dynamite. Fortunately, we had some tremendous matches with the Hart Foundation. With the entire family is so talented. The Hart family.
I've just got through reading another friend of mine written a book about the Bulldogs and sort of going a bit more behind the scenes of some of the stuff that we probably wouldn't have known with the help of the families and that. And it's an amazing yet tragic story. I think a lot of them up there, they're so talented, taken too soon.
Yes, absolutely. But Anyway, the territories were a lot of fun, and it was better. It was great with the territories because you could like wrestle in Florida for a year, then go to say Mid-South for a year and go to Georgia, but you would learn from so many different people and so many different styles.
Yeah.
Wrestling every single night. I mean, sometimes twice on Sunday and 2 and 3 times for television. So you'd wrestle anywhere from 7 to 10 times a week. And it was a way to get a lot more experience than the talent does today, because they don't have as much opportunity. You have independent shows, or you've got AEW, WWF. I mean, there's actually 10 different television shows on U.S. television from NWA. They have Lucha Underground, and and of course, like I mentioned, AEW, WWE.
A lot more than I grew up with.
Right, a lot
more.
more.
People are a lot more spoiled these days, I think.
Yeah, so just the business has changed. It's morphed. It's a different business, and you wouldn't. When I was in my prime working in the territories, and even going to WWF/E, we listened to the crowd. There were no script writers. There were nothing. Everything was done on your own. It was all your own creativity for the most part, other than some of the angles and things like that. But now it's like guys are doing the same matches all over the place, and we would never we just listen to the crowd. And if they're buying chain wrestling, why give them anything else? There's no sense in pulling out the tables and chairs if they're into the chain. So it's been a tremendous observation and education to watch us morph from the territories to the national scene where we are now.
I'm really excited. I know this is the first I've heard about it, but it's the territories is something I've only really learned about, I would say, in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. So I've not followed the current product for about that long.
Yeah, I think the fans are really going to enjoy the education and the fun and the pure entertainment that they're going to get because of the talent that's on these episodes.
You talk so much about it in your book, and I think so many of the stories that I loved from it were from those days, because it's an era that I didn't experience firsthand, but it's similar to Scott Casey. I spoke to him last year, and I've read his book as well, and it's from the same sort of era. And there's so many road stories that I think you'd miss out on these days. Correct. I don't know if these experiences still happen. The guys in the business now have the same experiences you guys have, but
it's changed a lot because the laws have changed. Things have changed. We used to do a lot more of our traveling in a car, so it was like everybody was drinking beer or wine and or smoking pot, or you knew every song to every tape that was put in, and everybody would sing the songs together. And you used to have to pay trans. For example, it was a nickel a mile. Let's say if you went from Tampa to Tallahassee, it was 400 miles. So you'd be 800 miles round trip. So whoever drove, you better have your $40 ready to pay for your trans. Or if you drove, the other people would pay you trans. So it was interesting, and guys were very good that you never had to ask anybody for their transit. It was automatic. I learned that right from the very beginning. You just hand the person, know how many miles it is, you hand them the money, and that's it. And
did you have any favorites, any of the best traveling buddies you had, and sort of any of the worst ones? So people that you favored and people that you would sort of try to stay away from?
Well, I had a lot of fun early with the Briscoe brothers, with Steve Kern, Jimmy Garvin, Don Morocco. Those were my primary Florida traveling buddies. And then as I moved on, each territory you wind up with new buddies. When I was in the Kansas City territory, which happened to be my least favorite of all the territories because the miles were long and the pay wasn't that good. I would ride with Jesse Ventura all the time, and we had adjoining apartments. And, you know, we had a great time for 6-9 months together, and had a little dog named Arnold. And when you ride with Jesse, I've always been a listener, but I was even more of a listener because Jesse would rock like this. He'd stick a dip in his tongue underneath there, and he'd just talk, Chris, until, I mean, he'd talk so much. I was interested in his stories. I just listened. Once in a while, I'd ask him a question, but it was always about Jesse. But that was cool, you know, because I like that. You know, I had enough experiences in my life by this time that, you know, most of them I wanted to put behind me, as you know from reading the book. But I had no idea what the future would hold. You know, I had no idea that I would someday be a successful business owner, that I would someday be an elected politician in a county with 1.5 million people, running in a countywide race. To put that into scope, it would be like running for governor of 11 other states, because there's more people in Hillsborough County than there are in 11 other states. And there's more people, and our square miles are about the same size as Rhode Island. So
that's amazing.
It was an experience, big experience. And then from there to Cauliflower Alley Club to I picked out some great spots. I had a wonderful career in Japan. And for the IWA, which a lot of people didn't hear of, it was a great promotion to work for. It was on the weekends only. They were all sold shows. This was after I left Vince. This was like in 1990. And then the UWF came along with Herb Abrams, and that was interesting for a while. We had some really good talent there. So I was fortunate to be able to, you know, travel and, you know, see all these places, to be in the first WrestleManias 2, 3, 4, to be in the first Survivor Series, the first Royal Rumble, the first overseas tours, all that stuff. And even before Vince was Atlanta, where the Ted Turner TBS cable experiment first started. And we would go all the territories had respect and wouldn't go into all the promoters wouldn't go into each other's territories. They'd have a meeting once a year that usually happened in Vegas, and Vince Sr. would come down. All the territory owners would meet. They'd pick out who was going to be the world champion. They'd barter some days to use the WWF champion or Harley Race, or whoever the champion, Jack Briscoe, whoever was a champion then, would get some dates in WWF. Vern Gagne from AWA would come in. And so everybody had a pack. But now we go to TBS, to Georgia territory in '85. Tito Santana, Tommy Rich, the Freebirds, myself, a lot of talent, Tony Atlas. We went into places like Wheeling, West Virginia, where Eddie Farhat, the Sheik, technically that was his territory, but he was never running it. And then we went into the Columbus, Ohio, and off the cable, all of a sudden it was huge. It was humongous. I remember we went into Dayton, Ohio, into O'Hara Arena, and there were more people outside than there were inside. And it was just
how do you when you prepare for something like that? You know, you realize how much it's blown up. You know?
Well, you know, it's like people ask me about WrestleMania 3, which is, you know, a lot of people say was the best WrestleMania of all time. Well, it was certainly one of the biggest. For a long time, it was the biggest. And you know, it's interesting. You go out there in a pair of modified underwear on a modified golf cart. And you're wheeled out in front of 100,000 people. it doesn't count the people. That's just the people inside, not
Yeah.
the people watching on pay-per-view and the videos that come out, and the legs that it has is unbelievable. The amount of people that have seen that, but it's a little scary. It's a little. It'll get your nerves shaking a little.
When you're in the ring, say, take WrestleMania 3 for example, because I don't think many crowds have rivaled that around that time. Are you aware that there's that many people in? Obviously, I'd imagine it's noisy, but when you're in the ring doing what you need to do, are you taking any of that in, or are you just trying to just concentrate?
Yeah, actually, I did, because Chris, what I did is, before the show, I went up to the press room, which was way up in the Pontiac Silverdome. And I looked down and I couldn't even recognize. I knew the ring crew guys that were putting the ring together and stuff, but I couldn't recognize who was who. And I thought to myself, wow, who would want to sit way up here? And, why would you spend this much money for a ticket to sit way up here? And even though they have the big monitors where, once those are up, you can see a lot better. But to me, that's almost like watching it on TV.
Exactly. When I go to one of these shows, I want to be as close as I can to know that I'm there. Yeah.
But then I realized when I went out there, and you asked me did I get a chance to take it all in? And I say yes, because the first time I looked at the crowd all the way around, and I just kind of took it in, and I thought about being up there, and then I thought, now I know why people are here, because there was more electricity in the air that it just had your goosebumps all over you, because everybody was into every single motion and everything that happened, every high spot, every word, and they all reacted in unison. It was a beautiful time.
You're part of something, you're part of something, don't you, when you're amongst that many people all there for the common cause. So
yeah,
that's incredible.
So you play the guitar, Chris?
I do. Yeah, sort of self-taught. I don't tend to play much outside my house. I would like to. But, a bit of confidence here and there, that's the thing. But I like to noodle around. So yeah.
I actually played in a band at one time. I played the drums.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
In my younger days. And I remember the Nasty Boys and Brady Boone and I went to Malaysia and Singapore. And there was a little bar there, and we went into this bar, and I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden we've got all the instruments back there, and that bar went crazy, and we were just playing a bunch of gaga.
They probably didn't care. It's just you up there. That's fantastic.
It's fun when you can go into different places like that, and the people are so happy to see you that anything you do is okay. Like, they're happy. They just want to see what you're gonna do.
What's the culture like? Because I was going to touch on your stint in Japan. Actually, obviously, the obvious question, I suppose, is back then, what were the biggest differences in styles and the culture of wrestling abroad compared to America, but compared to other countries you wrestled in as well?
Oh, that's a great question, Chris. And it really depends on whether you're wrestling their people or whether it's a tour where you're just wrestling Americans. Yeah. Because if you're just wrestling other Americans, guys from England, I call it anybody that can speak English. English speaking people, I should say. If you're there with English speaking people, it's pretty simple, but then I was in Russia in 1993 on a tour that the Samoans promoted, and Bam Bam Bigelow and I took turns because we were in Moscow for a week, and we wrestled their Olympic champion, the shoot Olympic gold medalist.
Okay.
Bam had a little bit of I had the most amateur experience, but here I am weighing 230 pounds, and this guy's 300 pounds, and so. Anyway, the matches were good. It's the first time I ever saw corruption at a high level. When they took us into the airport when we flew into the airport, landed in Moscow, they took us into a building with no windows, gathered our passports, which you're not even supposed to let your passport out of your hand, but Alpha Alpha and Sika, the Samoans. Alpha came up and said, "Hey, I need your passport." And of course, I gave him my passport. Made him promise that he was going to protect it.
Yeah.
And we sat in this room for 30, 40 minutes with no windows, and it was a little scary, you know. And all of a sudden, somebody comes in and dressed in a suit. He's talking to Alpha. A few doors open up, a light comes in, and we're all escorted out into these black SUVs, the kind that you see in the movies and stuff for the politicians. And everybody's got, every two people, Ken Patera was my roommate, the world's strongest man, Ken Patera. He was my roommate in Russia, and we had a bodyguard, and we called him Arnold, because of course Arnold Schwarzenegger was big then, and he had that accent, and he was big and muscular, and turned out to be such a wonderful guy. I mean, there were so many wonderful people on that Russian tour. Just the people themselves were brilliant. And but we had to then, you know, adopt, at least Bam Bam and I did, to wrestling this Russian guy without being able to speak much to him. I mean, we could speak to him, but there was no time to go in the ring and work on things. And so, you know, it was a challenge. And then, you know, other times you'll go, like when you go to Japan, you know, you wrestle the Japanese, and they have a completely different style than the Americans do, for the most part. And I wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling many times. I spent over a year and a half of my life there, and I enjoyed Japan a lot. As a matter of fact, they turned me babyface in Japan, which was fun for two of my 20 some odd tours there. But a couple tours I was babyface, which was good, so I could wrestle the American guys and have a Japanese guy as my tag team partner. So it'd be fun, because I'd go chop the crap out of somebody. One of the American guys and the Japanese go, "Oh, it's high." It's great.
Was that, you were in Japan, am I right in thinking, shortly before your move to the WWF?
Actually, Vince Sr. was the one that sent me to Japan the first time. See, I worked for Vince Sr. on two different occasions before I came back as one of the Killer Bees. And, you know, that was a lot of fun. The territories, the Florida tape went into New York. So it was great for me when I got to New York. The people already knew me, and so it was a lot of fun. And there was a lot of good matches, you know, that with so many, with Morocco and Orton and Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch and Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, one of my favorite opponents of all time, and one of my best friends of all time. We had just a really great chemistry together. And we would really lay them in. I mean, that was like a dogfight. When Paul and I wrestled, you absolutely felt it the next day, the next week. So
because you're such close friends, which I know, you know, again from your book, I realized sort of how close your bond was with Paul Orndorff. You trust them more, I guess, in the ring. You can probably do a lot more. I wouldn't say sort of convince the fans it's real, but I mean, would they have guessed that you were, you know, you hate each other in the ring, but outside of it, you know, you're best of friends, and that's testament to how good you were together in the ring.
And Paul and I worked so many times and didn't mind, because we grew up in the dungeon where it was brutal in Tampa under Matsuda, which you read in the book. Out of over 100 people in 3 summers that I was there that came in to wrestle or to train to be wrestlers, the only 3 people that made it were Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Hulk Hogan, and myself. And the rest left, almost all of them left without their clothes, screaming in the streets, "Just get me out of here," because it was really brutal. So we were used to taking a lot of punishment. Paul was a football player. I played football. We've always been rugged guys, and we respected each other enough to know that if we hit each other, it's strictly for the fans and to make the match even that much better. And so, we'd lay it in. I remember in Boston Garden one time I had Paul down. Well, first before that, Dick Worley, Boston's the number one heel fan or bad guy fan arena that I remember. And before the match, somebody had threatened to kill me. And then, you still have predominantly probably there you have maybe 25% bad guy fans, but you still have 75% good guy fans.
Yeah.
And Dick Worley's giving us our instructions, and all of a sudden I see this something whiz past my eye, and it freaked me out. I didn't know who it was going to hit, and it was so fast and sounded like an explosion, and somebody had thrown an elbow pipe. And if it would have hit one of us, we'd be dead.
Yeah. Because
it hit the wooden barricade and went right through the wooden barricade. And a couple minutes later, I've got Orndorff down in a arm bar, and I remember seeing this shiny thing zip past my face. And I look down, and at the same time, I hear Paul go, "Ah, son of a bitch!" And he grabs his mouth, and his tooth bent back, and there's blood just pouring from his mouth. And I look, and there's a miniature alcohol bottle, like a vodka bottle or a gin bottle. Somebody had thrown that and hit him right in the mouth. And after that, Paul started beating the crap out of me. I said, "Paul, I didn't throw the freaking bottle. I didn't throw the bottle, man. Loosen up, team." That was, that was a brutal match.
I bet. You get a lot of, I think the fans are a lot more split. Since like the Attitude Era, you can get away with more. As a heel, you get over a lot more with the fans but I suppose back then, it was probably it was a bit of an oddity having that amount of people kind of, trying to cause trouble, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really interesting times, and again, it's just great to reminisce, to think about all that stuff. And
yeah. Let's obviously I would be doing you an injustice, I think, by not talking more about the Killer Bees while we've got you. I think the one thing, personally, looking back on that era, the one thing the WWF were doing right, I think wrestling as a whole were doing right, was the tag team division. There came a time when it didn't seem to matter, midway through the 90s and beyond, tag team wrestling didn't seem to mean as much as it used to. When they put you two guys together, because you've predominantly been solo up to that point, what was your kind of reaction to having a fully fledged tag team partner and a gimmick to go with it? Thinking that this is like the real deal, not just a pairing for a couple of matches. What was your take on it?
It was I was the Florida heavyweight champion, and I knew I was going to come back because I had talked to Vince and. When I left the second time to come back to Florida, they wanted me to come here for a year or so and come back and compete for the Intercontinental Championship belt. And I was waiting on that phone call, and I get a call from Hulkster, and he says, "Vince wants you to come up if you don't mind." And there's a guy named Jumping Jim Brunzell. He asked me if I knew who he was. I said I saw him in magazines and knew that he was one of the high flyers with Greg Gagne in the AWA. And of course, Terry was there, and Vince had cherry picked all the top talent from the territories to start WWF/E. And Terry wanted to put us together. He said, "Vince is going to build a real tag team division." And I said, "I'll come on one condition. And we have to be the champions at some point." And because I wanted to be the Intercontinental champion, I don't want to go there. So anyway, of course, that was a promise. Went there. We got over big time. We were ahead of the time. We were ahead of our times. With mass confusion, with the mask.
That was brilliant. Yeah, it's
wearing
not something.
tennis shoes.
not
you know,
something a babyface team would do. That kind of.
well, a guy named Billy Red Lyons gave us that idea because he said, you guys are about the same size. And he said, I did it with my brother, Billy Red Lyons is from Canada. And he said he did it with his brother or his working brother when they were a tag team, and it got tremendous heat. And he said, I wonder if that would work on baby faces.
Yeah.
I said, I think it would if the heel got enough heat. The audience wants you to do, the fans want you to do anything you can, fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that. And I kind of talked to Jimmy about it. He was kind of so, and finally he was cool. So we had the masks made, and I tell you, the first time we did that, the people came unglued.
Yeah.
We did it to the Heart Foundation, and I mean, they came unglued. And so Mass Confusion was born. And then we, started the Nike tennis shoes. And the Young Bucks claimed not too long ago that they were the first ones ever to wear tennis shoes in the ring. Sean Waltman was very quick. X-Pac was very quick to send him a picture of the Killer Bees in tennis shoes from several locations, so a little
back in your box,
in the bubble, but we were, we were kind of ahead of the time in a lot of ways. And Jimmy had a lot of heat. He had sued Vince twice. I didn't know this when we got together, and while we were there, he got in a lot of arguments with Vince. And even though we were promised the tag belts, we were promised the tag belts on 3 occasions. And they even have in some of our action figures that the WWF put out, we have the tag belts. And for some reason, he had also been fired by George Scott. Right. It was just kind of I didn't realize all this stuff had happened, and George Scott was the booker then.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that
he wasn't helping your cause.
That wasn't helping us, right, with the belts. And so finally, I told Vince after the 3rd time they promised the belts to us, I said, Vince, I appreciate it. This was in Salisbury, Maryland. It's been a great time. And I just want to leave on good terms, and gonna go start a business. And he tried to get me to stay, and I left, started Gold's Gyms, and continue to wrestle, and it is what it is.
Do you have an idea, looking back on it, if you were to have carried on, if your career had carried on past the point that you left, whether you were single or the Bees were still together, do you have anyone there that you wanted to work with in a program, in a feud or a pay-per-view or anything that you didn't get the chance to?
Yeah, I would have liked to work with Brett in singles matches.
Yeah.
When he had the belt, Brett and I had great chemistry together. Same psychology, same work ethics. And Brett says the same thing all the time. And of course I was young enough to do another 10 years. But you kind of, after wrestling, God, Chris, we wrestled 67 days in a row one time without a day off.
Wow.
We were in 5 different countries, 67 days in a row. And here we're in Australia. And I hear Jimmy talking to his wife, and he's missing his young children's kindergarten graduation, and
a lot happens.
And the tears, and I'm thinking, golly, this is I felt so bad for Jimmy, and it's a big sacrifice, even though it was a lot of fun on that Australia tour. George Thorogood, he such a wrestling fan. We brought him down to ringside, and then him and Los Lobos took Brunzell and I out. That was a brutal night, but
gives you memories. But you say,
it's so much fun being able to go to all these different countries and experience all the different experiences that you get to experience. A lot of fun. But again, we're talking about my book, Truth Be Told.
There you go.
And you can actually get this on Amazon, or you can go to the Killer Bees .net, thekillerbees.net, and you can get an autographed copy
There you go.
for only $10 more shipped to you. And a lot of the stories, I won't tell a lot of the stories that I could tell because I want people to read the book.
Yeah, same here. I we could have done the whole show where we go through your career. I would have quite happily done that, but no, give people the reason to go out and buy it. You will not.
Yes, yeah, because I promise everybody. I tell everybody, if you buy my book, our book, I should say, Ian Douglas was a tremendous co-author, and he's done Bugsy McGraw's book, Brute Power.
Yeah.
He did
done Dan Sevens as well. I think.
So he's done several books, and anyway, he's great at weaving the stories together. I give him all the stories, and he weaves them all together, and it's 100% the truth. That's why it's called Truth Be Told. Yeah. Because he had to go back and look and check and talk to people and be a Sherlock Holmes. I even call him Sherlock sometimes. I ask him, how in the heck did you find out that information? But he's got a way of doing it, and
that's fantastic.
So we put this book together, and I tell everybody that, if you buy the book, if you don't like it, I'll give you 2 times your money back. And that's the truth.
That's a good guarantee.
I'll gladly give anybody 2 times their money back. If they do not,
I challenge anyone to go through it and not enjoy it. I said when I reviewed it, and I wasn't just saying this, because I was talking to you at the time, but it is. I've read most of the big ones that are out there, and this is by far one of my favorites because it tells tales of a time that I love to look back on because I didn't know anything about it when I was growing up. I lived through the late 80s, 90s. I knew what was going on. It's fun to hear the backstage and everything, but the territory days is something that I really am interested in now and finding out more. And there's no better way to find out more than through someone like yourself who lived it. But whose idea was the book? Was it something you always wanted to do, or was it something you were asked or suggested to you?
It took me almost 2 years to write the book, and I just wanted to write a book that would kind of let people understand what the territories were like, what we did, give them an honest, some honest humor, some honest information, just stories that people maybe had never heard before that they might be interested in. How I grew up and became a wrestler, and where I came from. I think that it's meant to be inspirational as well. Yeah. So that I came from very humble beginnings, as you know, Chris, and it doesn't matter. We're in a country where if you apply yourself, if you, despite all the BS that you hear on the media, it doesn't matter. It's all fake news. It's an opportunity you can be what you want to be. And I'm sure the same is in England. If you have a burning desire to be successful, then you can be successful. I mean, if you're going to sit on the couch all day and eat Doritos, successful aren't real big. But if you get up in the morning and apply yourself, and you learn little things, how to save $1 here. I try to give some good little hints about a couple things. And,
it's I think it is inspiring to be able to pick up a book from someone who's gone through so much. And like I say, all the things that you build up to your career, the early days, the bright lights, the WWF, and then what happened after that, and how you almost reinvent yourself along the way. It's not just about who you are in the ring. It's you are conscious of having more, and here you are, like I said at the top of the show, like you sort of updated us on what you faced recently. You can't help but be inspired. So.
Yes, I have strong faith. That's what gets me by every day. I have a lot of faith, and a lot of energy, and a strong desire to help to help everyone. I mean, when I ran for politics here, I didn't realize I had the most community service hours of anybody that had ever run for politics, from coaching baseball to speaking in schools to coaching football to coaching wrestling to so many speeches and different charities, raising money for different charities. And it just has always been a part of my DNA to give back, to help those that need a hand up. And that's why the CAC fit so well with me, is I have a passion for helping other people. Other people helped me, or I would never have been successful. I mean, you have to help yourself, but also there's people along the way that'll, if they see that you're working hard and that there's a value in that, and people can use that to their advantage while it's actually helping you at the same time to become more prepared for your future.
And whether you call it karma or, fate, whatever it is that you believe in, I suppose, good goes round, if you put it out there. So there's a couple of things before I go on to a couple of other things I know that you've got to talk about, that you've got going on at the moment. Some specific kind of memories here. I just wanted to share. This is the same one that I opened up with Scott Casey about. It's just, and you are part of one of my earliest memories of wrestling. The first event, the first video I was ever given was Survivor Series 88. And it's ironic, really, because you weren't there. But the reason you were always stuck there is because the UK release of the video still had you listed on the back. So I grew up for quite a while thinking you and Scott Casey were the same person. Because when he came to the ring, it's Scott Casey, but on the cover, it's Brian Blair. So I was like, oh, he must have just changed name. So
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Survivor Series, it holds the first couple hold a very special place in my heart, really, because that's really where I started as a fan. And you had a big part to play in the very first Survivor Series that you mentioned earlier on. And one of my favorite ones, and I wish they carried it on, and I kind of I can probably see why they didn't, was the 10-team concept, where you got 20 guys around the ring, and that's what you were part of in that first one. I've heard I've read interviews about how difficult that was. I really want to get any memories or your take on that. Was it difficult to kind of get around and perform properly?
It was difficult because we had to wrestle a few times, and you had to be, rather than preparing for one match and giving it your all, you had to prepare for a few matches and give it your all. And so as far as that goes, it was much more difficult. It was very rewarding at the end to be at the top of the heat, but it was a lot of work. That Survivor Series, that one was brutal.
So I've heard guys, you couldn't really run the ropes, particularly in the early bits, because you just got guys everywhere. So you can't, especially you guys, the Bees, you did a lot of flying around, and you probably couldn't do a lot of that.
Yes.
I
couldn't do a lot of flying, not till the end, a little bit at the end.
That's it. You kind of open up at the end, don't you? But that's you've got to kind of, you guys were really, I mean, that was a big sign that there should have been more things to come for you guys, that you putting you over in a match like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were the absolute hottest tag team on the planet at one time, and I just knew that. I mean, we were all ready to get the belts, and all of a sudden, George Scott had come in at the last minute, change the finish. Oh, we're not going to do it tonight. Vince and I think that we still have more money in the chase. So your heart sink down, to your stomach and think, wow, I'm working so hard for, and know that they actually, the powers that be, make us the champion. But at the same time, I go out there not for them, but for the fans. And I want to make sure that I'm giving the people that support us, that watch television, that come to wrestling, I want to give them what they want. And they wanted us to win the tag team championships in the worst way. I mean, you get all tons of fan mail, and they motivated us.
Mm.
And it's a shame that never happened.
You had
And,
some great
we had to go
teams.
to the WWF to win the World Tag Team Champions.
Yeah, you had. It wasn't even like that. You wouldn't have had competition. You would have had the Heart Foundation. You still could have worked with, and Demolition had come through, and there was definitely depth to that division. They did it once, didn't they? I think I read the Rougeos won the title at a house show, and then they just didn't acknowledge it, and then they put the belts back anyway. They almost seemed to want to have that switch. But it's almost like they I don't know, nerves or something. It doesn't make sense from a fan's point of view why they never went with it. There we go.
That's true.
But one thing we are getting now that I think I would have absolutely loved back then is, I know the classic superstars, the Jakks action figures have got you guys out there. It's the Killer Bees, but we're finally getting some new Killer Bees figures out, courtesy of Chella Toys, I believe.
That's right, Chella Toys. What a great company. Jimmy and I just signed a deal with Chella Toys, so we have new action figures coming out, and these are the best action figures I've ever seen.
They're modeled on the Hasbro.
They're so real-like. It's amazing. I've never seen action figures this. Not only do they look like us, but the moves, the way they move, they're really, really nice. Really nice.
They're in the same vein as the old Hasbro ones, the ones I
exactly that kind of like the old Hasbros.
But right. The problem with those, I found they're very, very cartoon-like. So they've basically taken what was great about the action figures back then and made them more lifelike, like they are now. Right. I mean, they've had some fantastic ones coming out, but I really am quite excited about the Bees. It's ones you would have had. I had all kinds of action figures that weren't wrestling ones, acting as ones that I didn't have, that weren't out there. And it's great to see some of them actually coming out now, and you could, I know I'm a bit old probably to be playing with them, but I've got a shelf or two that they can sit proudly upon. So do you know when they're due out at all? Are they still in production?
I'm actually not 100% sure. I just know that, I think we're supposed to see, because we have to sign off on the final approval. That will be, I think it's at the end of, it's the last Friday of this month. Okay. So we will sign off on those and how long it takes them to go to production. And
I have no idea when these.
I think they're ready to roll. So
that's cool.
Shouldn't be too much longer.
There we go. I'll be keeping tabs on them, and I know I follow them on social media anyway. So I'll.
Super.
Yeah. So going back to the Vice TV series as well. I forgot to ask earlier on. Again, same kind of question. Any idea when that will be? With us? And
September, I believe.
Oh, awesome. There you go. I cannot wait for that. It's I'm probably gonna have to bring it to an end, fairly soon. I can probably sit here all night talking to you, Brian. Yes, this has been an absolute honor. So.
It's been great, Chris. I appreciate you giving me the time. Thanks for letting me plug my book, Truth Be Told. Again, you can get that on Amazon, or you can go to thekillerbees.net, and you can also order them there and get them personalized. I appreciate you letting me bring up the Cauliflower Alley Club. That's caulifloweralleyclub.org. We do wonders, and it's an organization where everybody's welcome to come to the reunion if you're a member. And it's very inexpensive to go. $150 a person for the whole reunion, which includes a couple of great dinners, a bunch of entertainment. Get to see all the honorees win their awards. We've got some tremendous honorees from the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, Conan.
Oh wow! Okay.
We're gonna have JBL. We're gonna have Jerry the King Lawler. The list goes on. Kevin Sullivan, Tommy Wildfire Rich.
Nice.
Jacqueline.
Who's who, basically. Yes. The best part of wrestling, the best era. This is what I like to celebrate on this show. Is is that time that really, the 80s, 90s, guys like you that made it so special for me growing up. And
I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Chris. I
No
appreciate all the
worries.
fans. Thanks for writing a nice review on the book.
No problem.
And thanks for having this wonderful podcast.
Thank you.
Once
No.
Upon a Turnbuckle. I love it.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for that. I've got one final question to finish off on.
Sure.
So if you had a fan who wasn't familiar with who you were, your career, if you could pick one match, this is quite a cruel one. If you could pick one match that you feel represents your career, it's something, if someone could watch one Brian Blair match and that would be you, what would it be? Which one?
In a singles, it would be myself and Mr. Wonderful from St. Louis, which is on YouTube, where I'm in the black tights, I believe. That's when Vince McMahon came up to us and said it was the best match he had ever seen in his lifetime, up until that point, I'm sure. And that was, the fans stood the whole time. That would be, as far as single matches, and as far as a tag match, I would say for Saturday night main event, the Killer Bees versus the Hart Foundation, when we won with Mass Confusion.
Cool.
And even Dick Ebersol, we blew away the Saturday Night Live ratings. We blew away all the ratings. We had the highest spot on the whole show that night. We beat everybody, Hogan, everybody. Wow. And it was a tremendous match, and it was because we had four guys that all wanted to give it their all. Jim Neidhart, and Bret Hart, and Jimmy Brunzell, and myself. Everybody kicked it in, and fans were great. Fans are there. It just makes everything so much easier.
The fans were never going to lose in that situation, were they, with a match like that? To be fair, anytime. So
no, but those are two cool. Right off.
I'll dig those out. I'll share them on my page if anyone hasn't seen them. I'll stick them up there. But brilliant. Brian, thank you again. Can't thank you enough for your time. This has been such an honor to welcome you to the show. Thank you for everything. Thanks for the book. Thanks for the memories, and all the best with everything that you've got going on.
Thank you very much, Chris. You take care. God bless you and your audience, and
thank you.
Keep enjoying wrestling.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.